Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and everything in between, above, below, and through dimensions, my name is BlazyBard, your host with an ever-increasing amount of hair. We got Mifflin right here to the left-hand side of me. And, Mifflin, look at us. We're wearing some matching clothes right here.
They're both... Yeah, dude, I'm super excited for the SCC today, Blazy. Can't wait to cast with you later on, man.
It's going to be so great. That's absolutely right, Mifflin. We're here casting day 2 of the first week of the SCC here on the NA side of the bracket yesterday. As a quick recap, we had Elysium, Clay Soldiers, just F6, Pandemonium, Snake Hunters, and Accounting Departments play. As you can see that the scores are on the doors. Elysium, Pandemonium, and Accounting Department walk away with W's around their waists for the first day. And now, for North America, we got some pretty heavy-hitting games.
Yeah, Herculean Hoofs versus Sturdy Artisans, I think, is going to be my personal headliner of the day, and luckily also the first set of the day. I mean, let me just name some people in both of these teams. You tell me it's not going to be exciting. You got guys like Baskin and Sino, Stewart, Ionic, all these big-name, heavy-hitting players who I think would qualify as SPL tier content, and what Aggro said yesterday, what he thinks the two best teams in the entirety of the SEC, NA, and Europe put together, I think we're in for a treat here, Blazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to agree with you. You know, I mean, just talking about Herculean Hooves alone, like, ignore everybody else. You know, you've got players on here who have been in the SPL, who've been at the top of the SPL. World champion Baskin, might I add, just as a side note. We can go ahead and have a look at some of their... never mind. Quick, Mifflin, tell me more about Baskin and his team.
Well, I think you really did word it correctly there, Blazy. It is Baskin and his team, right? Last season they were called Baskin and the Boys. Rightfully earned moniker. This guy is very often able to do it on his own, but that doesn't mean he isn't flanked by some incredible talent. You got guys like Stoopy, Gino, Masked, and Meerkat around him. Guys who have been around the SCC and SPL level for as long as the SCC and SPL have existed. They're certainly a team to keep your eyes on, and I think they're the team to beat in the North American SCC.
For sure as well. Notably for this team, Baskin going back to where we saw him in the SCC last year as opposed to in the SPL at the end of the same year. Going back to the mid lane rather than sticking in the solo, lets Meerkat come and be a part of this roster. And Meerkat is just an incredible player. We have some footage here from that game that I do think this was you and me at the end of the SCC qualifiers, Mifflin, but this Baskin build with 40% CDR, just absolutely ripped through fishies back at that stage, and I'm expecting we're probably going to see something probably similar coming out here from Baskin.
Yeah, and just for further frame of reference, this is from the SCC qualifiers, this clips you're seeing right now. Baskin ends this set like 17-1, by the way. That's how dominant this guy is. 17-2, you're right. Absolutely correct. How dare I take away one kill from the enemy team? Because killing Baskin is an incredible accomplishment. But look, you can't let him get away with stuff like this. You can't let Baskin have the thought. You can't let him do whatever he wants on the map, which is why I think when we talk about the Sturdy Artisans, we have to talk about some of that up-and-coming talent inside of Pagon. This guy absolutely dominates the North American ranked scene, and playing mid, I think he's going to have to prove himself up against Baskin.
For sure, and, well... We say prove himself, like, this man has already been pretty recognizable in the SCC over the past year and a half, at the very least, and probably beyond that I'm not quite aware of. But even, you know, removing Pagon, if we're just talking like we did about Baskin's team, about SPL level talent, I mean, we have Sino here, we have Ionic, you know, these players aren't unfamiliar within the realm of top tier Smite esports, so... As I'm going to just harken back to what you harken back to Aggro saying, these are two teams that are definitely at the top of the SCC right now, and we have it's going to be a wonderful treat to see them go against each other today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what version of Sino decides to come out this fine Friday. Are we going to get the Arachne like we're seeing in all these clips? Is he going to go back to his signature Naja? Is he going to break his Twitter promise and bring out the Chop Chop Osiris jungle? I think there's so much and so many facets of Sino that it's going to be really hard to keep track of him in the SCC. But in Season 8, I have been saying jungle really isn't the tried and true hard carry that it used to be. Nowadays, it's a little bit more so about your mid laners, your ADCs, and both teams have stacked people in both of those roles. But we didn't get a chance to talk about Stuart, the ADC for Sturdy Artisans. This guy has earned the respect of every single SPL tier ADC in the game. Barracuda, Zapman, they all respect Stuart for his ranked play. You can even go check their Twitter following. They follow this dude. I think we should be following his gameplay as well, because he's really been impressing me this year.
Absolutely, most notably on that Apollo that we saw him so comfortable on during the SCC qualifiers. But we can continue up this discussion whilst we have a look at how these two teams are going to draft against each other. Game 1, picks and bans. Here we go. Mifflin. Now, I'm expecting kind of traditional things that we've been seeing throughout the qualifying stage. This is still pretty early on, right? Nothing really has changed between patches since now in the qualifying rounds. So probably Apollo, some healers, some mid laners.
Yeah, I think largely going to be the same, but there has been a slight difference in meta developing between North America and Europe. We see that North America values a little bit more pressure than Europe did. We were seeing a lot more bans towards late game hyper carries and healers over in Europe, whereas already the Sturdy Artisans taking out tier in that first slot, that sustain and pressure out of the solo lane, a little bit too much to deal with, so they don't want to have to deal with it at all, remove it in that first phase. Scylla as well getting taken off the table, and then Sobek Guan Yu. This is already large shifts from what we saw yesterday.
Absolutely, and with only one ban slot left to go, will Set be taken off the table? We barely saw Set. I think we maybe saw him twice during the qualifying rounds, so it would be a huge surprise to see him on. Hoofs are going to play the smart move and take him off of the table. Top tier jungler at the moment. I know that you said jungle isn't a carry role, but when Set's in there, it definitely is up for discussion. Camazotz going to be the first pickup here for Sturdy Artisans. I think this is probably going to go to Relentless One in the solo lane. We've seen him pick it up so much and he looks so comfortable on it.
Yeah, Relentless One has played it, but as has Sino. They both have got a pretty decent history on this pick, so I think it's going to operate as a flex for the near future. We might get a little bit more clarity on where that's going to land in the next phase of picks, but so far the Hoofs are going to go ahead and take the Sun Wukong in their first slot, picking up their own solo laner. When you take a solo laner that early on, it kind of indicates to me that they don't think this Camazotz is headed there and instead going to the jungle, but it's so interesting, this pick order from both sides. So many priority picks have made their way through. Yamoja, Apollo, Persephone, even Ymir makes his way through here as well, but Heimdall is going to round out that top two for the Hoofs. That's a very safe solo lane and a very safe hunter. It's locked in.
Well, it looks like Hoofs might be looking to draft something kind of spicy in that mid trio, the support jungle mid, to try and go a little bit more ham and then have these side lanes be a little safer, able to operate by themselves. But Stuart going to run back to this tried and true Apollo. No complaints there from me. Looks so comfortable in this character. Now, mid laners are still open for both of these characters. There are a lot of heavy hitters still on the board. Nuwa is out there. Thoth as well. Raijin, Giannis, which is going to be the pickup here for Sturdy Artisans. How do Hoofs respond?
We'll be likely going to be going into the mid pick here, but let's talk about this Giannis pick, because in Season 8, I think it is very different from what we saw last year. In Season 7, Giannis was this niche pick. It really was only Hurrywin locking it consistently, but with the advent of Conduit Gem, a lot of Giannis' early game woes have been alleviated. No longer is he struggling to find pressure in lane. No longer does he struggle to clear out waves until level 6 or 7, and it's going to allow him to free farm a lot more easily, with itemization changes for mages in general, leaning towards Rada Tahuti and Spear of Desolation. It means that he's going to be keeping up in consistent damage output. Giannis is a much more prominent pick in Season 8, and I'm really excited to see what the Artisans are going to do with this double global presence between Giannis and Apollo.
Me too, but let's quickly touch on the fact that they've banned away two of the picks that you were talking about here for Sino, Chop Chop Osiris and Naja, taken away from the Artisan jungler. So definitely erring on the side of this Camazotz being towards that solo lane, expecting it to go towards Relentless One, but could definitely still flex it. Thoth banned out for the Sturdy Artisans. Yamoja was picked up here by the Hoofs at the end of their first stage, and they're going to... Well, I mean, I said they were going to pick up something spicy for this mid trio. I wasn't quite expecting Morrigan to be the one to fill that niche, but definitely fits the bill.
It's a slow start mid for the Hoofs, and I think it's largely due, in fact, to the idea that Thoth and Persephone have already been removed from the table. Those are Baskin's most high-impact early-game picks that we've seen him on. So now he's got to wait a little bit longer to get involved in these team fights. It's going to be a lot more involved for the Soul Laner to get the peel and the disruption factor for him to make sure that this Morgan is able to operate. And I think that the Morgan is a pretty smart pick considering what the Artisans have already locked in. If you're able to close gap on a Yanis, one-shot him, you don't have to worry about how slippery he's able to become, or even Camazotz, if his beads are down ever, bad out of hell, isn't going to save you if you're dead before you're able to get up into the air. I think that the Morgan brings a lot of options to these team fights, but I'm worried about the Hoofs' capability to take true 5-on-5 engagements. This is not the best team fight composition I've ever seen, especially considering how the Artisans round out their draft. They pick up a tanky frontliner who's going to be able to disrupt very easily inside of Achilles, and they've got the guaranteed engage inside of Confound from Athena. I mean, it's very one note how the Artisans are going to approach these fights, but it's a very good note that they've got.
Absolutely, yeah, and I got to agree with you. Hoofs really are going to have to find some way to follow up off of, well, we can only really expect to be Masked on the Tsukiyomi here. He's going to be going in, I assume it's probably going to be the main engager for this team. But as you said, these team fights aren't really going to be what they're going to be looking for, right? Surely they're going to be looking for a pick into the fight rather than just trying to fight 5v5. So if Artisans can push that advantage and force them into a 5v5 fight, I think they have a pretty decent chance of this.
They do. I think the Hoofs' main engage factor might be ranged engage from Yamoja, maybe using a Riptide to set up for a stun from the Morrigan, or Tsukiyomi slows and then poke from a range, or perhaps have Sun Wukong trying to isolate someone in the back line. But even then, that execution, the necessity of execution there is so much higher.
Well, this team definitely doesn't shirk away from that execution, but ladies and gents, I'm going to throw you over to Finch and Gore for the cast.
Thank you on the desk. We've got Blazy and Myth sounding like long-term veterans on the desk. It's Finch and Gore, as he said, as they move into Game 1 between Sturdy Artisans and Herculean Hoofs. A big one here, Gore, between these two teams, so I think have a chance to be at the top of the SCC. Obviously, Herculean Hoofs represent that same team that dominated the NA SCC last year. And Gore, I kind of find myself agreeing. I love this Sturdy Artisans draft with all their global pressure and their great ability to set up these team fights. How do you feel about these two teams coming into it?
I really am digging the vibes, again, like you said, from Artisans over here. First off, I'm excited to see this. Yanis has been kind of this big talk in Season 8. He really erupted at the early end of the season just because people... typically, you're going to see anybody who can have movement-based anything be picked up often at the beginning of the season, especially with how wide this map is. But he's kind of steadily stayed up there. People aren't really dropping off on him. He's been banned a couple of times yesterday. And so I'm excited to see what he can provide, especially because last year, I think we saw in a meta where he didn't determine anything, some players still use him to a high-end and level of play. And so I want to see what Pagon can do here, because I think that could be the, not end-all be-all, but kind of linchpin for this team. It has such insane setup if you get a really good through time in space or really good escape. Either way, there's a lot of options for him.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I think that Pagon, one of our upcoming stars recently, I don't even know if upcoming is right for this guy anymore. At this point, he's such a big name now, but it feels like a chance for him to prove himself up against the best who's ever done it, and Sino is the one that falls, making life hard for Pagon as Baskin finds first blood, and maybe a chance for Mast to get a little bit more. It's 2 kills to start it off for the Herculean Hoofs as they cause an absolute nightmare in mid.
Look, they're just taking a note from adapting yesterday. Sometimes you die first. It's not a big deal. Elysium, we made a big point of it yesterday, and then he turned that one around. So he's not going to sweat this one, although that is definitely not where you want to be. I think we were talking about this as we were kind of preparing for this. We were looking at specifically these two rosters, and there's a lot of big names in this one, Finch. Like, you don't have a lot of room for error. Masked is someone who can take the 1 kill, the 1 assist, and really start to run away in the jungle with it. It's not going to be a massive leap, but 1 level in the jungle this early on, just hitting level 5 first, especially for someone like Tsukiyomi who can dive a little bit better to the backline, that is an area where you have to be a little stressed out. So Sino needs to focus on some of that farm, maybe chill a little bit. Achilles going to take a little longer to come online and be as potent, I think, than what we're going to see the Tsukiyomi do a little earlier.
Yeah, I'm thinking so too, man. They're going to need it, though, right? That's why you put this warrior in the jungle if you're Sino. And look at this, Mass are going to get involved in solo, but Relentless One, I think, wise to this, backs up, so no chance for that Mass gank. But to talk a little bit about Sino more here, like you were saying, Gore, I think that we might have expected Camazot's jungle, Achilles over to the solo lane, but this is something that Sino loves to do. We know he loves these warriors in the jungle, and certainly Camazot's, with all his sustain, is fine over here in solo, and I don't think they're losing a ton of pressure. Achilles could be aggressive early, just like Camazot's, and both of them are going to be strong once they get some items. I love this flexibility here for Sturdy Artisans as Ionic, one of my personal favorite supports from a long time ago, grew up a TSM fan, looking for the invade, but not quite able to find it, and now stuck in a dangerous part of town, but gets out of there easy with that dash.
I was actually looking it up because I saw Ionic on Athena, and I just thought, that feels right? Like, I didn't know why. I couldn't explain it, because I was like, I don't have any numbers. I was just like, but seeing Athena's portrait next to Ionic's name just felt appropriate. And so I did look it up. It's his third most played god, at least in the Pro League.
Wow, and Ionic playing that for a long time as Sino forces Meerkat up into the ultimate. Gore, I think this is another good conversation point. Meerkat moving back over here to the solo lane, putting Baskin back in the mid. This is something we know that Meerkat can do. He's had experience in the solo lane, but I think this puts some spotlight on him. Solo is so important this year as Sino looks for yet another gank. There's the blink, but can't find the stun. If that stun lands, I think Meerkat's in some trouble.
And it's something, especially if you get him right out of that bird form, you take away all escapability, you make that 72 transformations go on cooldown, but now it's Mast who's in trouble.
Ionic dashing in, but the stun will land, and he gets punished. Even the River's Rebuke coming through, they want the action here as a good Riptide keeps them locked in, and now it's Baskin's turn to start cleaning up. He made the transformation and was able to set up for an important fight there on the backside of it, turned into the Tsukiyomi. And that's what did all that damage and helped set up for it on the back of Geno's great River's Rebuke. And I think Sturdy Artisans, as strong as their draft is, they cannot afford to fall behind like this to a Morgan and a Tsukiyomi.
Yeah. I mean, it's already 4-0, right? It's this aggression coming down from the Sturdy Artisans that's just getting met with equal aggression from the Hoofs, except the Hoofs are getting something out of it. They're walking away with these kills. Not only that, but I have to take a moment, Finch. The River's Rebuke on this skin for Yamoja just looks so cool. The sword's coming down, planting it down, a literal you shall not pass kind of moment. And Geno placed it so well in the jungle there just to block off some of the escapability. And again, you have someone like Yanis, who's more often than not going to be able to walk through walls, but when you catch them out like that, it makes things just a little bit easier for you on the Hoofs to be able to lock them down. And like you said, later on, I mean, if you want, you technically can have two of them. I can't imagine a Morgan wanting to turn into a Yamoja, but having two River's Rebukes does sound pretty solid. There's a lot of opportunity for Baskin to play around with this, and he's kind of back in his hometown, right? We got to see him have that stint in solo lane towards the end of last year in Season 7, but mid has always been where Baskin seems to perform the best, which is saying something considering he tends to perform really well no matter where you put him. But I expect this is going to be a really high execution game for him, and he's already 2-0-2.
It's an excellent start for him on this board. He's had such good transformation targets early. We've already seen the Tsukiyomi as Meerkat in trouble in solo, absolutely soloed by Relentless One. I know you guys heard me take that casually, but I just didn't see the potential, and neither did Meerkat as Relentless One finds the 1v1 over there in solo. And we talked about it. Can Meerkat handle the spotlight, the pressure that is solo, in a year where it's much easier for you to get those solo kills, and already some struggles for him?
And really, they're trying to figure out, at this point, where you can go. Again, it's going to take a little bit. Sino, especially with that early death, is just trailing slightly. Not much in experience, but trying to figure out how to be as aggressive as someone as Mast, who's on this assassin. They're going to go for it.
Big two-man taunt sets up for Pagon to delete Geno with the through space in time. Absolutely flattens him, but there's nothing more on the back of it. But that is what they're going to need a lot more of. Ionic into big damage on the back of those taunts, and it was absolutely there that time. And I love this. Sino and Relentless One being very greedy, looking for anything they can find in the enemy jungle. Just unlucky on the timing. Everything is down. I don't know if they have the information, but this blue buff is about to spawn. If they steer nearby, it's a great invade. And yes, they will send Relentless One back, so good work on the back of that kill there in near mid. They should be able to get the invade, and Meerkat coming to defend. This is so risky, but no, Relentless One leaves. They don't want this fight at all.
Well, they get the buff. They have what they wanted out of it. If Athena gets out of here with that ult, she should be able to. That's clean. You get in, you get out. That's all you really want in that scenario. You do have to burn a global for it, so maybe not the best case for Ionic, but considering the other side of that is death, absolutely, right? You'd rather spin that than feed another kill over to him. You managed to find those two that you really needed to pull back a couple of kills, one over there in solo, but getting rid of Gino. Like, having that back on and under your belt for Artisans is big, even if it cost you a couple of ults to do so. And so they're slowly showcasing what they can do. The only problem I have is that was a lot of setup to get one shotgun blast from a Yanis, and not even that far away, right? So if you have to do that for every kill, eventually you're going to start running out of things you can do or kills you can get. So hopefully the next couple, get the single picks whenever you can, but hopefully I can see a little more 3v3 synergy here in the mid lane, because otherwise it might start slipping out of their hands.
Yeah, it's not quite the same as having that reliable Scylla crush on an 8-second, 10-second cooldown, is it? Not at all. So I'm with you there, Gore. I think Sturdy Artisans are going to have to show us that this Ionic setup has really reliable payoff and consistent payoff in these team fights. Now, if that's a two-man taunt, like onto the back lines or a front line and a back line, and 3 space and time hits them both, you're not going to hear me complaining. But kind of to your point, 3 space and time is such an important tool for Giannis as Ionic takes some poke in mid, but he's okay. That you kind of don't want that to be the best follow-up you have in every case, the way that, like, some other gods can kind of have a bit more of a low-commitment follow-up to that taunt. So I'm with you, Gore, on that point. We'll see how Sturdy Artisans are able to navigate it.
I'd say here, like, with Conduit Gem online and having an unstable Vortex, that's a lot of damage, right? It's not going to necessarily be the same, but he does have a lot. Disengagement, this is where things are really getting risky. Relentless One wants to fight, and it feels like Meerkat does too, but Meerkat's definitely not the one walking away happy from these fights. He's way low health.
Yes, I know. Now the one stuck in a bit of an engagement. Gets out of there through space and time, and Meerkat is low, but he's made it up to the cloud, so he should be safe. Apollo, even here for this fight, as Stewart sees Baskin way in the back and looks for him. There's the dash committed, Audacity, and the So Beautiful all there, but not enough for the kill, so we come back to blue buff. A Relentless One has flattened Meerkat yet again. Another big kill here in solo, and Gore, I love this. Sturdy Artisans have forced the entire action of the game back to solo, where they have an advantage.
And you get nothing, really, if you're Snoopy. Like, you're getting about half of a tower health, and that's pretty big overall. He might even be able to push down that tier 1, but the kills that are coming out here for Sturdy Artisan, or maybe even lack thereof, the engage has been big.
Oh, but now here's Herculean Hoofs getting their return kills. No chance that they're able to get Ionic out of this on the right-hand side, but no, Mass gives up on the chase, so if they only give up 1 kill, that's not nearly as bad here, Gore, as what I thought we were seeing as Baskin chases out Relentless One. Baskin turned into Apollo to catch up, and now Snoopy has come over to mid and gotten Paycon. The action is all across the map on this one, and not nearly as clean as I might have expected from these top 2 teams, but this is the start of the year, Gore. Everyone's coming in, trying to figure out where exactly they stand on this new map, so not surprised that things are all over the place.
I was going to give Stewart a lot of props because when he rotates into that fight, he ults into the backline immediately just to zone out Baskin, right? He's not even trying to get the kill. Once Baskin gets away, he says, cool, Baskin's not in this fight. We don't have to worry about Morrigan ult. And what I love is that Baskin retaliates with Morrigan ult. Now might find himself in trouble because of it.
Yeah, Sino and Relentless One are an overwhelming force. There's the taunt, and Meerkat falls as well, so more action in solo. Let Sturdy Artisans close the gap even more. The gold lead now negligible, Goremizer. This is more about where the experience gaps are, and there's a big one for Snoopy and Stewart, where Snoopy has a huge lead, so that could certainly be impactful, as well as a little bit of difference in mid and support, but not nearly as big as I think what Snoopy might be able to do as a seasoned SPL caliber ADC with a lead on Heimdall.
Yeah, especially on Heimdall, like you said, right? Once that ult is available, either a get-out-of-jail-free card or the fact that he's able to isolate it. Stewart's not going to be easy to lock down. Apollo has a lot of survivability.
Yeah.
But if you can get them in the right moments, those 1v1s will present themselves in a good way. Or just keep doing what you're doing. Rotate over, kill Pagon off while he's in the mid lane, right? Like, I don't care if it's Stewart, but I like the way Snoopy is playing this. And that's the biggest thing. I think Sturdy Artisans are showing good presence around the map, but the Herculean Hooves, their retaliation and their response time definitely shows them moving as a unit. Like, just watching the mini-map, you can see the communication.
But Meerkat has the ult. No chance to get the kill here. Yeah, and I like it. Meerkat just ults right away. Basically had to in that situation, but he is under constant pressure in solo here, Gore. But look at this grouping from Herculean Hoofs. And this is part of why I love this Greater Scorpion conversation. Yes, they get Greater Scorpion. That's not a huge trade in and of itself for all that pressure they're getting in solo, but now they're setting up for it. If they keep committing 100% the Sturdy Artisans in solo, then Herculean Hoofs can really respond with a Gold Fury push.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Meerkat's 0-3-0. He's down 3 levels. Like, there's only a certain amount more you can do before you're just wasting your time over there, right? Like, I think
you can only be so behind, right?
Are someone you have to worry about. But yeah, like, eventually it's just like, cool. Well, where else are you gonna fight? Now you have to worry about this over here. Yannick's been sent up into the sky by Snoopy. It doesn't seem like they're gonna commit to this, but they've got plenty of opportunity to work with.
Relentless One is in first. In comes Stewart with the through space of time, and the Across the Sky is masked, is in trouble of dropping. They've already gotten Baskin, and now it's up to Yannick, who gets the kill 2 for 0 as they punish the attempted red buff invade from Herculean Hoofs that didn't even work. They don't even get the buff, and now, this is also why I think this Greater Scorpion conversation is so big. Basically, Herculean Hoofs set up for Sturdy Artisans to get a huge objective this early in the game.
Yeah, Gold Fury this early is going to be a big swing. Snoopy's still in the neighborhood, but I don't see him making any hero plays for this one. All of his cooldowns are up, so he doesn't have a lot to work with. And like you said, I mean, you go in, you get that Scorpion. Cool, that red buff that's sitting on the ground for another few seconds is enhanced, but it's not going to do a whole lot for you. 1, if it's not on anyone's belt, and 2, if the other team is able to secure a big objective like that. You can come over here, get a Greater Scorpion on this side of the pit if you really want to. They've been solo side focused anyway, but get that Pyromancer spawned, and then Sturdy Artisans can start to climb up. I mean, this is almost 3,000 gold now in their favor. You've got Wukong. He's only 2 levels behind now at 0-3-0, but he's behind an entire item at this point, and that's really solid for a Relentless One, especially with the rotations he's been making into these fights. It's just going to allow them to keep this pressure going pretty easily.
Especially because this start that Wukong's like to go boots into Soul Eater with Bluestone for the poke. It's just not tanky at all. You're really relying on your sustain to be able to keep you up in that lane and being able to poke with that cudgel. But Relentless One on Camazotz is a better fighter from range and up close and has better sustain, right? He kind of checkmates Wukong at all the things he'd like to do and does them better, especially when you factor in Sino's relentless pressure and presence in that solo lane so far. Look at this, they're waiting on Meerkat again. Is this Mifflin on stream with the way they're waiting? But they have the ward. They know about it. Yeah, thanks for having my back on that one, but so they're not going to be able to find it. They had the ward there to see it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're standing on it, yeah, he's going to know better. But it does allow this. Again, look at the grouping and the way Herculean Hoofs are replying. Gino's making a rotation over. They might look for a pick here, but again, it's actually the opposite. Earlier, Sturdy Artisans were the ones looking for a fight, and they kept paying for it. Now it's the other way around. Herculean Hoofs are going to eat this one.
Relentless One gets this kill on a Gino off the great setup. Through space and time was there just if it was needed. And all of a sudden, hasn't the Sturdy Artisans really flipped the script in this game? And it all comes from that solo lane pressure where I don't think Herculean Hoofs realized they needed to get help over there from Meerkat sooner. And now Relentless One getting aggressive, avoids the stun from Baskin, but can't look to start any more fights. So they'll take a nice little red buff invade. That's not a consolation prize at all. They continue to expand their lead.
They steal that one away. Again, enhanced at the moment because that Scorpion's on the other side, but that's perfect for Sturdy Artisans. The tower as well, like just put more golds in your pocket and make things happy. Gino is someone that I want to highlight here because I feel like this Yamoja is honestly maybe the easiest way back for them into this fight. Just good setups from a River's Rebuke will really allow a lot of things. Of course, you want Meerkat to get a little tankier to be in these fights just in general. Yes. Right now, he walks in, takes half his health, and runs away. Not a lot you can do in that window. So now that he's gone for the shield, expectedly, I want to see Meerkat do more than run away. We'll have to see as that comes through. But right now, Gino's the one because here's the example. Level 10 to 13. He's about 2.5 levels behind, not the full 3. But this is realistically where we saw Yannick last year. Like, the reason he got dropped out of the Pro League last year was because he was so far consistently behind. Gino really needs to make up this difference.
Well, they do have that ultimate coming in. That'll provide some protection. Is now Snoopy forced to retreat. This was Herculean Hoofs getting the Christian, but now he gets flattened by the through space in time. Gino narrowly avoids the unstable vortex coming out as well, but Yannick keeps with the chase. Yannick, you're all alone, my man. How are you getting this kill by yourself? Yeah, he gives up on that aggression, and I think rightfully so. Meanwhile, Meerkat will happily take this time alone to get some much-needed farm. But Gore, I think you make a great point. Yannick really seemed to struggle at the SPL level in terms of knowing where he could safely position and what he could get away with, but it looks like he's found his groove again here in the SCC, hasn't he? He's really been setting up the Artisans well.
And with this team, I think it's a bonus that Athena, of all things, comes back in. Of course, there's not 5 minutes that they're not going to spend some action here, but Gino, if he's the one taken down here, and it should be the execute, that's just more pressure on this tier 2. The retaliation from the Hoofs might not be enough.
Good work, though, to at least force Saito to commit that far. That's why he ends up falling here. Meerkat gets that much-needed kill. There's the taunt from Ionic to give his team time to reposition and even find a trade kill. Pagon gets rid of Mass to make this 2-for-1, and Artisans are actually winning the fight because they start off with that great pick onto Gino. And somehow Ionic manages to wiggle his way out of there as well. And Stewart greedily stays for the invade through space of time. Almost catches Meerkat. I don't think that would have killed anyway, but I love the attempt.
And you have to remember, as time goes on, not time, as distance goes on for that, that ult hits harder. I like the further away you are, the more damage it will do. It doesn't apply to the Titans after a certain amount, but you can feasibly, if you're in your base, cross-map somebody and potentially find a kill off of that one. So I like that that's where Pagon's mind is at, maybe feeling himself a little bit. Saving Ionic there, I think, makes that even bigger. Losing 2 for a tier 2 is still probably worthwhile, but making sure your tank gets out alive, that he's still 1-1 and 9, a really, really solid support line here for Ionic. It just makes things so much easier. They can walk in. They're in a good position to get this Primal Fury with no real issues. And so far, there's nothing spawned on the other side of the map. No Fire Giant or Pyromancer just yet because that Scorpion's still hanging out. So they don't have anything to worry about in retaliation.
The Scorpions have been big in this one, haven't they? Primal Fury goes down to Stewart's crit build for free. He's got Wind Demon. Looks like he's going to be following that up with yet another crit item on the back of this. So be careful if you're over on Herculean Hoofs side. And whose job is it normally to deal with these crit hunters? It's the solo laner, right? But Meerkat, my man just barely has a shifter, shield, blink, and beads. I don't think he's going to be the answer to Stewart anytime soon as Ionic starts up more fight. He taunts in Gino. It's Relentless One who follows up, but the damage wasn't enough for a kill. So looks like Sturdy Artisans are backing up.
Yeah, I don't know how consistently Meerkat can deal with Stewart without Stewart dealing with Meerkat. I mean, Stewart's got a 3-level lead over Meerkat, right? Like, you're going to jump back there. Yes, you've got a little bit of physical defense, but it's not going to be enough. And now they're going to go back in. Good taunts from Ionic just to set things up. This is a lot of damage.
Unstable Vortex is the follow-up. Not enough to kill Gino there, but it has him certainly low. Sino and Ionic step up again. But Sino taking a lot of damage from Snoopy there through space and time. Does not connect, and Ionic can't find the taunt either. So Hoofs have been very patient in this fight, waiting out Artisans' abilities. But still, it has deterred them. Artisans are going right to that greater Scorpion you mentioned.
Well, hopefully they don't do what we saw the Hoofs do earlier, which was get the Scorpion, lose the objective afterward. Although right now they're in a pretty solid amount of control. I mean, again, 8,000 gold at this point as they've steadily risen, slowly but surely, further and further away from what the Hoofs have. Pagon may be going too far here, but beautifully juking out Mass Salt, so there's no follow-up. He's going to be able to walk away from this one. Again, Risky burns his beads in a bad position, doesn't have Aegis, has Blink instead. And so he's in a dangerous spot now. With no ult, the portals only help you so much against a team like this. But I still think that 1-level lead and the damage that he's been outputting at this point, it's enough to make me believe in him. I'm not sure Pagon's going to be feeling too bad overall. And it's mainly because you've got a crit hunter right behind you. You've got 3 really solid tanky bodies that are going to run around you in Sino, Relentless One, and Ionic. And the only person who can truly deal with them at this point, at least it feels like, is Snoopy, because his build is perfect for being a tank killer, going that chin size, looking like he's trying to get some more pin online to deal with them. But he hasn't been in the fights.
No, he really hasn't, has he? Snoopy, they need him getting more involved as River's Rebuke comes out near the Fire Giant. A big win for Sturdy Artisans who commit next to nothing to get that valuable ultimate out. I think Meerkat dropped the beads as well, so big win for the Artisans who want to force this fight. Ionic goes in, 2-man taunt, and the follow-up is there. Meerkat already deleted through space and time, hits Gino as well, who's certainly now in trouble. So it's Relentless One who keeps at the pressure, but Sino and Pagon, they go to cut off the escape route and give them nowhere to go. Stewart is in the air as well, and Gino's time is limited. He's on borrowed time, so to speak, as Sino finds that final kill. Relentless One now stuck right in the thick of it. He'll pay his life in trade, but I think his team happy with it. They've got a chance to clean up more. Sino gets the stun, but Mast finds the kill on the Sino. They get Stewart in the back as well as Snoopy finally shows up, and it's a triple kill for Mast out of the jungle, who saves this for the Hoofs.
Look, Bast is the one that gets the triple kill, but I honestly want to say Baskin's transformation there into Relentless One, becoming the Camazotz, really helps set them up. Keeps him alive, makes sure Relentless One goes down, and allows them to have that mobility. Mast, of course, plays that beautifully. Same thing for Snoopy. I mean, when you lose both your tanks, it is not easy to be 3 squishy targets in a scenario like that, but pulling that back and getting those kills, I mean, it doesn't equalize the game in any state. Kills are almost close, but you're still 5,000 gold behind. But that's a huge swing in their favor. They've still got 10 seconds before anybody else is back on Sturdy Artisans. That's a kind of moment you could start looking for a Fire Giant, or at least have time to play with over here. It's risky because there's going to be some respawns. You don't have Pagon's ult just yet, but I don't know if they have the timer on that in their mind. So they might not be going for it here. They just want control of the pit, control of the vision. So far, that's all they have.
Yeah, I think Baskin not being there kind of gives up the game, huh? That they weren't quite willing to all commit to it just yet. But Gore, I think that Sturdy Artisans got a bit lost in the sauce in that last team fight. I don't know why they were all over the place. Back for a flank on that fight to get behind the tier 2. It left Relentless One alone for too long. I think that you're exactly right in what Herculean Hoofs did well to win the fight, but I think Artisans gave them some openings because they really spread out. But as you said, the lead not gone yet. Artisans can certainly still win this fight around the Fire Giant. If they don't lose Relentless One early, who's in trouble of falling before the backup can get there, he gets stunned out, but still has the ultimate, so he doesn't feel like he's in that much danger. Now Ionic is here for the backup, and everything's okay.
Imagine juking like 2 different stuns to get hit by a 3rd stun. Like, there's just so much CC on the table there to have to move around. Luckily for Relentless One, he's still able to walk away alive. And this is the beauty. It goes back to what we were saying during Picks and Bans, but you've got 3 global ults here. Like, nobody's worried about backing on the side of Sturdy Artisans, because if Ionic has to back, well, he can get right back in there. If Pagon has to back, anybody that backs with him can get back in there. And same thing for Stuart, right? They're not stressed about where they are on the map. If I'm stressed about anything, it's the pressure. If you get Fire Giant, you might lose Oni Fury, which maybe is a worthwhile trade for whoever gets FG, but if you go for the Oni Fury first for whatever reason, they might just respond over on the other side. And I think Hoofs are making this rotation over to the left-hand side of the map because they know with all the vision they have over there that they can make the right play. Baskin has ult, so there is somebody who can transform into someone with a global ult to make sure they get over there. It just depends on how confident you feel about jumping into potentially a 5-man stack. The Artisans have matched them pace for pace. Once they get Ionic back in here, they might be looking for a taunt engage just to try and get some control on this map again. It's not spiraling out of control for them, but one more lost fight like that, and the Hoofs find themselves in a much more sturdy position.
And this Oni Fury is well-timed, isn't it? I mean, that's going to give Artisans that opening they need to force a fight around Fire. Now, it's either those Oni waves are threatening your towers and Phoenixes, or you're here with me at Fire Giant, or you're not at Fire Giant and we get to take it for free. So I think this is a good opportunity for the Artisans to really put Herculean Hoofs in a bad position, in a catch-22. Let's see what they can do to maybe go ahead and break this game open just a little bit more. Because Gore, losing that fight at Fire, you see how it stalled them out, how it's robbed them of their momentum? It was a really tough loss they took, but now they're ready to try and start it back up.
I'm also interested, I feel like we don't see this Gem of Focus as often coming out. It's the upgraded starter there for Pagon. Just going for it's going to give him a little bit of movement speed. He's been trying to get around the map, and it's working out well for him here.
As they already put great damage into Meerkat, who's not been very tanky this game. Sino forced to use his ultimate to disengage. Relentless One stays aggressive, but still not hard coming to the fight. Through space and time is used, but doesn't connect for a ton of damage, and Ionic pulled back in by the Riptide. So that's 2 ultimates used on Sturdy Artisans for just 1 used on Herculean Hoofs. Not a bad trade if you're a Chaos Team fan right now.
It's definitely making it, again, a little more difficult for the Sturdy Artisans to get things done. But yeah, that Oni wave that's over there and left is at least getting some work done. The Fire Giant's falling pretty quickly. The Sturdy Artisans managed to secure it, and they have not yet lost the fight. So Herculean Hoofs are going to hard commit to the battle instead. Taunt from Ionic finds little value. Stuart still finding there's the taunt finding too, but all alone is Ionic just taunting into his own death. So now the Artisans have to retreat. They have Fire Giant on 4, and the Hoofs want to take a fight. They know they can't exactly go back and defend that wave. It's not even going to make it to the Phoenix, so they can just take this battle as Baskin transforms it through space and time just for that. I'm wondering if they had more in mind for what they wanted to accomplish there. Still a 5-on-4. Cyno's going to be caught out of position here. They have to be very careful, but fighting under the tier 2 with Fire Giant and Sustain, I don't think you're that stressed.
Here they are coming back in and finding Stewart. Looks like Sturdy Artisans got caught off guard, and Herculean Hoofs have sprung the trap perfectly. Cyno falls alongside Stewart, and now it's not just like that Sturdy Artisans got the fire and they're looking for a push. I think Herculean Hoofs could do a little damage of their own. They'll take this tier 2 tower in right. Not going to go look for a Phoenix or anything like that. There's still so many towers for them to go get. But Gore, Sturdy Artisans have gotten a little too sloppy around these Fire Giant fights, haven't they?
I don't, why turn around there, right? That's the biggest thing I'm wondering. Like, you get away, you're under tier 2, Baskin wastes his ult and misses a 3-time in space. Like, you have a solid win under your belt because you still have 4 members with Fire Giant. I would argue you sacrifice that tier 2, whether they push into it or not, and go base, just wait for Ionic to come back. Athena, sometimes form you want to find the man like outstay. Like this is a personal sacrifice to make sure you can stay in the game here. And then you walk back in and lose 3 of the 4 buffs anyway. Like Pagon having it, Relentless One having the Fire Giant buff, it's going to be helpful, but nowhere near as helpful in my mind as having Stewart with it, right? It's still going to be nice for you, but I think that they give away a lot of their capabilities of being able to push that left-hand side Phoenix down either of these 2 towers that are left standing, whereas there are 2 really easy to knock down tier 1s still standing here. The Hoofs have been winning these fights pretty convincingly the last couple of times. This power play means virtually nothing to me, and there's a lot of gold on the map for the Hoofs. I mean, like, you look at that deficit right now, it's still 6,000. But there's plenty of gold on the map for them to close that gap instantly, and a couple of kills going their way will make it a much easier time as well. At least these tier 1s will knock off another 1k, but once you grab those tier 2s, you're sitting pretty.
Okay, so Herculean Hoofs pushed up for the tier 1 as a group and then took their backs as a group. Relentless One can't get there in time, and that plan for the Hoofs works out perfectly. But as you said, Gore, I don't think if I'm the Artisans, I'm really thinking about pushing all that much, like not any more than I would have been without the Fire Giant, because it's only on Relentless One and Pagon. Certainly still helping those 2 out. They're not going to complain about the sustain and the buffs, but not nearly as impactful as it would have been if it was still on some of these other members. And now, we might just have a grouped up fight in the jungle. This is another odd part, it's just like the fight selection for Artisans has not been great either. So let's see if they hard commit to this one, as Ionic can always ult into the fray. Relentless One right in the thick of it and goes up with that ult. He also has the Defender of Olympus on him as well from Athena as she comes crashing in. So there is Ionic joining the fray, but still not a hard commit to this battle.
Man, Meerkat, I was going to praise him because he got that spectral armor. It's going to help deal with Stewart a little bit and help him get to the background, but he's still taking so much damage from Pagon whenever he engages into the fight that it's just not making a big difference, that Anjali is not doing enough, I think, to really pull back on what he's taking. He's in the fights more often. He's caught up at this point, right? Levels don't matter anymore except for the fact that you've got a 3-level deficit there for Gino, but you're 17. You can upgrade your starter. That's all you need when you're a support, right? You're happy, I would argue, considering how far behind he's been elsewhere. But they're really starting to fall into an interesting category where the tanks aren't really doing a whole lot for the Hoofs right now. It's not their prerogative, I would say, to win right now. It's really on these carries that are making the difference.
Yeah, I think so, right? I mean, it's been Stewart in the backline, it's been Snoopy in the backline making these big plays for them, and I think it's been kind of a macro issue for the Artisans, kind of having some trouble in these last couple of fights, knowing when they should be starting them, where they should be positioning during the fights, and how they should be executing them. And on the other side, the Herculean Hoofs have been playing that part of it well. They've been playing kind of soft back, not hard committing, and letting the Artisans make bad engagements onto them. So that's what I want the Artisans to kind of clean up, is how they're starting these fights and why. And here's another example where Cyno takes a whole bunch of damage, in fact, falling to Baskin, just kind of caught out on his own. Why? For this tier 1?
Yeah, it's such a weird scenario to try and go forward with Ionic. Again, it's kind of it feels like almost a self-sacrifice. Like, wow, what are you taunting him for? Like, what are you going to get out of that taunt? You know there's no follow-up. Pagon maybe is going to be able to hit a big 2 off of that unstable vortex, but I mean, you're not finding a whole lot. Now you've lost a tier 1, a tier 2, and it looks like a Phoenix.
That's going to be this Phoenix falling, and they're lucky if that's all they lose here, because Herculean Hoofs with this 5v3, if they get one more pick, I think they might just be able to end this game. At the very least, go grab more Phoenixes, as that portal does buy a little bit of time for Pagon at the very least get to kill onto Mass, but they're going to lose Stewart here as well, who gets pulled back in by the Riptide, and one more kill goes the way of the Hoofs. So let's see what they elect to do. They're going to start falling back. Relentless one goes in, gets caught in the CC chain, but Pagon gets himself a double kill in the back of that ultimate, taking care of Gino. So there you go, Gore. I know that these fights have been a bit odd for both of these teams, but Pagon coming back in, trusting his ability to be aggressive and all the damage he can do, defending this base well.
And they still lose the Phoenix. Like you said, best case scenario, that's all you lose. And you do lose a couple more players, but you don't lose the game. I thought for sure once I saw Stewart go down and Relentless one dive back in, that it might as well just be over. But that was a good ult from Pagon, like you said. Good awareness on him to make sure that he's able to get that damage out there. He's got a lot on board as well. I mean, the Rod at Sahudi, the Spear Desolation, like everything stacks up. But starting the Fire Giant, I mean, this is brave, but they've got plenty of time without Mast and Gino. They might be able to get away with it.
Yeah, they've got 4 members here. It's just Stewart that they're missing, and maybe they're trying to bait in Hoofs to take a fight that they just can't win when they're down in numbers. So Meerkat's up on the cloud, still chilling for now. Looks like Yannick wants to go back in for a taunt. Relentless one is here with him, but yes, I like the reset much more. Backing up, waiting for Stewart to join you, getting healed up, and then taking the fight. Gore, this has been... I don't know if sloppy's the right word, but it has been kind of just a constant fight, hasn't it? Doesn't feel like these teams are taking proper resets. It doesn't feel like they're kind of sitting back and waiting for proper engages. They're just kind of scrapping.
And it's weird because out of all of that, you know, you'd expect me to say that Artisans being able to showcase their aggression win. I actually think Hoofs came out on top there because Stewart, when he came out of base, was prepared to go in for a fight, uses his ult, but then just lands about 10 feet away, doesn't even make it that far into the jungle. So they've burned a nice big global ultimate away without even intending to there on the Hoofs. So you have a little bit of wiggle room. Granted, Stewart's going to be in the fight now. He's made it over into the area, so he's not too stressed about it. They're missing Pagon. There's an ult to get him over here. Again, these global ults are really what's eating away at the Hoofs. They don't have a lot of moments that are alone because everyone can rotate so quickly.
And the CC chain is too strong. Yannick is stuck inside the River's Rebuke with no backup. And his life will be forfeit. That's been the big problem as Stewart's able to make his way out thanks to a portal. But in comes Mast, using the ultimate to get to the backline. Meerkat gets rid of Stewart. And I think the tides have officially turned fully in this game where the Hoofs are starting to really hit their stride. Sino falls to Snoopy, and it's a 3-for-0. They can't afford, the Artisans I mean, to send one member forward. They keep getting caught in the CC chain. It's a free pick.
Yeah, that's Spectral working wonders there. I think Meerkat, if he goes back there with literally any other physical defense item, Stewart gets that kill and is able to turn that fight around. But making sure that that goes down the way it does and that Meerkat's able to be in this fight. Again, as much as yesterday I kept saying it just felt like frontline dip between all of the games, this has been maybe the opposite. Like Meerkat not really having an impact till then. Same thing for Gino, right? Those River's Rebuke have been important, but they still need to stay alive and get something done here.
Yeah, this is an attempt to end, but Meerkat has fallen in the back, and they don't have Basket here for this just yet. So there's Snoopy dropping the ultimate just to get rid of one body for the time being, but that's where Pagon is focusing his attention on to Snoopy, who's the most consistent damage. Gino has to fall back as well, and it looks like they've done it. They've defended the base. Mask is going to fall to Relentless One as well. Another just overcommitment, this time on the side of Herculean Hoofs, who cannot get it done in the actual Titan. Stewart gets Gino, and now Baskin is a man alone. He has that Mad Eye's cloak, but he can't end this by himself.
Yeah, the best he can do here, I actually like the call to kind of hide out. You can see he's taking a dip into the doors. He's not here to try and kill the Titan. He doesn't have enough time to do that, and if I see him walk past this Phoenix, I might lose it. Baskin, I don't know that you've got the damage for this one, unless he transforms into somebody, but I don't know who.
He's turning into an
ADC. I guess the Apollo.
He's going to try and 1v1 the Titan, but it's just not going to work. Baskin, as Gore said, that was ill-advised, but it did force a couple members to back. The Phoenix is back up, and now they're threatening the mid-Phoenix as a counter in on the other side. Only Meerkat is going to be up in time to try and defend this base. I think Herculean Hoofs have just thrown this game away. Let's see what Meerkat can do as the Titan is down to half HP. The Mez is there, the CC is there, and the Titan getting lower and lower. Through space and time connects. Meerkat is done, and the Titan is there to follow right after. Snoopy can't do enough. And the sturdy Artisans get the end and the win. What a way for the game to end.
Yeah, I think you roll it back. If I'm Baskin there, I wait for the Phoenix to respawn. I kill that, then I back, group up. I mean, Meerkat respawns just a few seconds later. You'd have 2 to defend the Titan. Then Snoopy comes in. Like, having that numbers game, maybe it's not a winning scenario. Maybe you still end up losing because your team unfortunately wiped there at the very end in the Titan room. But at the same time, it gives you that opportunity and some room to play with, right? You have a little more wiggle room than, okay, Meerkat, good luck.
Yeah, just weird decision-making for, like, the last 13 minutes of the game, if I'm being honest. But it ends up working out for Sturdy Artisans as they find the base defense in spectacular fashion and then close the game out. I am desperate for the Des to break this game down, but that's going to have to wait till the other side of this break.
Oh boy, Mifflin, was that an absolute treat of a game. I know that you and I were in the green room, so to speak, virtual green worm, just really biting our nails at that final play there. Basket not quite able to make it, but Sturdy Artisans do, luckily for them, right? Because I was going to be devastated if they lost that game. They do manage to pull it through.
Yeah, I really think that the Sturdy Artisans won the game in the first half, right? The team fight was so much better. It was so concise and clear for the first 15 or so minutes, and then we kind of had it become a bit more of a mud fight as time goes on, as North America is apt to do. But I gotta talk about it, Blazy. I can't not. That ending attempt from Herculean Hoofs was crazy. I think that we have to give Baskin the benefit of the doubt because he is one of the greatest who have ever done it mechanically. But had he decided to group up with his team instead of going to red buff, they perhaps end as 5 there pretty easily. Or maybe if he uses the Mez as Apollo for additional defense or even the dash to create some space with the Titan, we might have been able to see an end there as well. But at the end of the day, you're absolutely correct. Sturdy Artisans are the victors of Game 1. But I think Herculean Hooves are going to make it a lot harder in Game 2, likely with some differences in the draft.
Absolutely. I don't think we really heard much from Masked this game. He seemed very, very quiet, mostly because he was just getting shut down by Pagon here again and again. Like, most of this highlight reel has just been Pagon here, right?
As it should be.
This man, yeah, absolutely. This man pretty much single-handedly stopped Artisans from losing on, like, 3 different occasions, so absolutely hats off to the man, but yeah, as you can see here, Mars just not really making too much of an impact, which, if you're playing that Tsukiyomi as this kind of linchpin pickup for Hoofs that we really expected to see make those pickups that this comp needed to get into those fights. Didn't really do as much as I would have liked to have seen him to do personally.
He could have done more. You can always do better, but I'm going to have a hard time finding fault in Mass when he's outperforming the enemy jungler, right? He had a better slash line, he did a little bit more damage. I think at the end, it really did come down to a little bit of decision-making, a little bit of trolling from the Hoofs towards the end of that match. And I think the Sturdy Artisans were taking it very seriously from the rip, but maybe a couple of misplays around the Fire Giant, or maybe sticking around a little bit too long. Some overstays really kept them in that game a little bit longer than maybe they should have. I'm expecting Game 2 to be cleaned up a lot from both teams.
So, whilst I've got you here, Mifflin, can we talk about this build here from...
Rather not.
From Sino. the crit attack speed Achilles in the jungle. Mifflin, do you have any thoughts on that? Is this something we should be looking to see more of?
I think that it is almost an artifact that we've seen come from the European SCC. We've seen crit Kamazot's jungle. We've seen all sorts of crit jungle picks coming out from over there. Even I think a crit Loki at one point. I think it's probably due in fact that he really wants to have the opportunity to shut down the Morrigan easily, or whatever he needs to get onto. He wants to be able to one-shot them pretty quickly. Or even, we saw how it came into play around the neutral objectives. That double crit composition between Achilles and Apollo was absolutely shredding objectives, and that's how they got their lead throughout the match. Every single Gold Fury fell in like less than 6 seconds.
Okay, well, we'll have to see if it's something that Sino wants to do again, but let's jump into picks and bans for game number 2 here and see if he's even going to go back to this Achilles, because I think there are a lot of different options that Herculean, that the Artisans could have used for that jungle slot. I don't think Achilles was the be-all and end-all, so if they do want to run a similar kind of composition, more than happy for them to pick up a different jungle.
Yeah, I would like to see them try and shift things up a little bit, but we know that he loves his off-meta picks. He's going to play whatever they want. That could be said about both junglers. Both Sino and Mass are kind of going to do whatever it is that they feel like on the day of. If that's Achilles jungle, if that's Amaterasu jungle, or if it's Surcat, Nemesis, or something along those lines. It depends on how they're feeling. But so far, bans are staying largely kind of similar. We've got Kamazot and Sobek taken off the table by the Hoofs, and meanwhile on the other side, the Artisans have already removed that Scylla. I'm imagining we're going to see them really start to shift up these bans in that third slot. I wouldn't imagine Set makes his way through, but I could say the same about Yanis.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think the Hoofs are going to want to see it, but they do let it through. Artisans are in the position to take it away, though. They are going to opt to not ban any more mages. Tier will be the third and final ban for the first phase here for the Artisans, leaving Giannis wide open for Baskin. That's exactly what it looks like he's going to go to, being hovered here for the Hoofs. And there it is, Robot Man getting taken over to the Chaos side. Sorry, the Order side this time around. It's going to be interesting to see how Baskin plays this compared to Pagon last game.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty aggressive, right? I'm expecting some blinks. I'm expecting some early plays and some early rotations from Baskin. It's very fitting of his playstyle. When I think of Baskin in Season 7 and Season 8, I really associate him with the Yanis, and I associate him with Thoth. So I think that it may have been a slight oversight from the Artisans here to let that through for him. But in exchange, they're able to pick up a couple priority picks themselves. Sun Wukong, an incredibly safe solo laner, as well as fantastic rotation potential, and Heimdall, one of the safest hunters in the game right behind Jingwei, gonna get locked in.
And now, with, as you said, Thoth hasn't been banned out this time around, and there are still a couple other mid lane options available to Artisans if they do want to pick something up in this first phase. Yamoja does get picked up here by the Herculean Hoofs, alongside a second pick, presumably. But what do you think the answer is here, mid lane-wise, for the Artisans? Do we think maybe see a Thoth or a Ra?
It's really hard to say whether or not they pick their mid laner in this slot. If they do take it here, I'm expecting the Artisans to take something along the lines of Thoth or something like that. Something that can match the aggression and be that ranged poke factor to really give them the edge in these team fights, especially up against something like Yamoja. Thoth would be very good for applying Divine Ruin from a range, but you said it, Ra getting hovered, Blazy, just out of your hat, man. This god has been largely left by the wayside throughout the entirety of Season 8, and And that's
we got
why Morgan
bamboozled.
gets locked in. Yeah, that's a much better pick in my opinion. Dark Omen from a range on a very low cooldown going to be applied to Divine Ruin just like Thoth would have been able to. But I think the Artisans are running into a very similar issue that we saw in Game 1. Their team fight is, well, in reverse, not as good as it could have been. It's kind of reminiscent of what the Hoofs were running in Game 1. I'm very concerned about how they're going to approach these 5v5s.
Well, we could still see a linchpin tied together, right? We could have something like a Humbats and an Athena to come in and kind of give the team a little bit more of that team fight presence. Maybe something not quite like the Humbats, something a little bit with more utility outside of just the ult. So, off the top of my head, I'm thinking maybe... Actually, I can't think of one. I can't really think of a good jungler outside of Humbats who offers much outside of that ultimate for a big team fight disrupt. But Arthur's going to be the lock-in here for the Hoofs. And they don't want to see that Athena get brought back. She's going to get taken off the table. Ganesh as well. So they really are identifying that Artisans need something to pull this team fight comp together. And they're not going to let those two really impactful Guardians through.
There's still a lot of priority pick jungles still on the table here. They could go towards the Tsukuyomi. If this Ymir does get locked in and we're not getting trolled by these guys again, that could be one way to find a much easier time looking for these engagements than Season 8. With the jungle lanes being as narrow as they are, it's so much easier to find high priority walls to separate these fights, especially up against what the Hoofs have already. Yamoja and King Arthur are going to be very easy to lock down, so I really like it. But both teams in need of a jungle. Tsukuyomi still available, not much longer. Hoofs lock that one in. Where are the Artisans going to go now with their last slot? They could go towards that Naja if they're looking for single target presence. They could go towards something like a Thor if they want to have that team fight kind of engage factor, as well as that early game pressure from having a global ultimate. There are a lot of really good options available, but this Hoofs draft, man, it's going to be hard to contend with.
For sure, yeah. Tsukuyomi, I was maybe expecting the Awilix, which is something we've seen picked up against the Ymir quite a lot. Okay! Chuck is going to be the last pickup here. Now, Mifflin, is this a Wukong jungle? Is this a Chuck jungle? Is it a Chuck mid Morrigan jungle? There are a lot of ways this could play out, huh?
Look, that's Sino, aka Sino Sure, the Nuggets fan, all right? I've got a pretty good idea that it's likely going to be Chalk Jungle, and it's likely going to be an auto-attack like Chainsaw-style build. That's what we used to see from Sino back in Season 7. Every now and then when he was having a bad day in Ranked, and he'd like to run it down, this is what he'd play. I think it can actually work up against this composition as well. The sustain that Chalk is afforded by the Rain Call, the disruption factor that could be brought to his team by the ultimate as well, with a knock-up and a silence, kind of fitting that role that Hunbot's Fear No Evil might have been able to do. I think there's a lot that he's able to bring to these team fights, but it's not about how well this Chalk is able to execute on his own. Come mid to late game, no longer is able to take those 1v1s, no longer is he the threat that an early game Chalk is. It's really about how well is he able to Voltron up together, group up with this Ymir, play around this Morrigan. And you know what? Team fights is where the Sturdy Artisans were really struggling the late last game. We'll see if they've cleaned it up.
I love that Voltron together analogy, Mifflin. So let's go and meet the other two parts of our Voltron construct. John and Gore taking it off with the cast.
Thank you, Blazy and Mifflin, once again on the desk, as we do move into Game 2 between the Artisans and the Hoofs. And as Mifflin implied, the Artisans had an excellent early to mid game, right? The first 20 minutes from them were great, but things started to fall off, and they barely were able to still close out the win. Can they do it this time with a Wukong and a Chuck and an Ymir? These are pieces that, kind of as Miss said, could be great early, but how do they function in the late game team fights up against Baskin on Giannis, up against Mast on this Tsukuyomi once more? I mean, it's going to be tough for him.
Look, I think over the last couple of days, every time I've seen Giannis, I've been talking a lot about Herwin, because most recently in the Pro League, he's the one who's been able to look phenomenal on it.
Yeah.
Baskin is nuts on this god. Like, this is going to be a good game to watch Baskin for, strictly because of that. But I like that Pagon goes for Morgan, strictly because I don't care who he turns into. I like the idea that he decided he wanted to be Giannis again, and that was the only way he could do it. For a short amount of time, every time his ult is available, he will be able to play as that Giannis again. And I think it's an interesting dynamic. I want to see how that works. and I'm trying to ignore this because when we look at how that matchup goes, it's so interesting. I think the dynamic over there in solo is going to be interesting. Relentless One now taking on what Meerkat was playing in the Wukong. Meerkat scooping up a King Arthur, who I think has been very dominant that we've gotten to see. There's an interesting duo lane dynamic going on with some god swaps. But it's Chalk Jungle, man. As much as I feel like this has to be the starting point, right? As many places I can think, this is the one I can springboard off of. And it has to come down to the fact that there's 3 things I have to say about it. First part is the fact that it's Cyno. So Cyno is going to make this work regardless of your thoughts on Chalk. That's just how Cyno works.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's going to go 0-10. Sometimes it's going to go 10-0. He'll play the same god, and it will look drastically different. So there's that part of it. The other one is split into 2 thoughts, which is that I have my SPL caliber thoughts on Chalk and my personal thoughts on Chalk because they are 2 different things. Chalk in the SPL, if I'm watching this and I see the Pro League lock it in, I'm about to have a conversation with you about how it's not going to do that well. It's probably just going to get farmed off unless they have a really drastic game or there's a really drastic skill gap. Right now it's Ionic who maybe is in trouble. Do I need to drop or can I get to my 3rd point? I'll go to my 3rd point, which is the fact that Chalk is just fun, right? He's got a lot of damage and he is interesting to play and I think it creates a fun dynamic. I'm excited to watch it.
Oh, but Stewart gets the kill on the Snoopy. Ionic stepped up for the freeze. With 1 HP, the Madman makes it work, and now Gino has to run for his life. There's the slow, the Frostbite passive, all connecting, but Stewart uninterested in this support battle as Ionic does everything to make it work. Stewart had no faith, no backup, and so Ionic has to do it all on his own. What work here in duo. But Gore, I'm right there with you on this Chalk. I think Mifflin, I'm mad that my first 3 minutes of this cast is just quoting Miff, but he said it was going to be the attack speed Chalk build. It's Eye of the Jungle, which has the attack speed, and looks like he does have some kind of auto attack item coming next. That's exactly what the plan's going to be here for this Chalk.
And it's fun, right? I mean, it works really well with his passive, unless, of course, in the 2 years that I was gone, it ended up changing, and I don't know it. But being able to get those free casts on your abilities, right? It's something that has always been, I want to say theorized, and it's kind of been fun, but, like, you never got to see it in pro-level play because it just wasn't as good as going for more ability-based kind of just hybrid, right? I mean, you were just playing solo, you were playing tank, you were being the front line, not necessarily focused on ability damage versus auto-attack damage, things like that. But then, you know, when you go in and you're like, I'm going to play Chalk ADC, and everyone's like, oh my god, you're throwing our games. You go for attack speed, you get things like chin size ridiculously, but you get your passive up often, and you're getting a ton of free abilities out of that. The mana and the cooldown that you're getting out of that passive, the overflow, is so fun and so helpful in the middle of a team fight. Again, if it works out well for Cyno here, I think we'll get to see a cool fluid combo of abilities. If it doesn't, then we're going to be talking about, man, why was Chalk picked, or why did we even go off on the possibility of it being positive? Of course, it never could be. I think he has a lot of potential. I just think it has to be in the right hands, right scenario. And I'm going to be honest with you, Finch. After the last 13 minutes of that last game, I don't know if the right scenario is going to come up. The decision-making is going to have to be cleaned up a little bit more to make sure this Chalk isn't punished.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where once you kind of get a bit off the rails like that game did, it can get tough to get back on them, and I don't think either team did. I think they just tried to make it work, kind of off-roading it, so to speak, you know, ATVing it the best they could. But let's take a look at some of these other starters. You can see that Stewart and Snoopy are doing different starts. It looks like Leather Cowl Transcendence for Snoopy, so he can get his lifesteal from the starter, and Stewart's going the more traditional Death's Toll right into the Devourer's Gauntlet for just a ton of sustain and plenty of power too. So we're seeing some different approaches from these ADCs. Is Gino in trouble again? Ionic finds the freeze, dashes into Stewart, and that really should just be all she wrote. Once he lands, nowhere for him to go. And yeah, Pagon, I like you showing up, but your services weren't required.
Here for the invade. Yeah, that's one of
Gino
those
tilted.
small little tilts that come through. Although I think honestly maybe appropriate. Gino spent all of last game behind. I mean, like, Gino has been at the brunt of it, and admittedly, and I wanted to say this, I wanted to try and find a nice way to say it, but I don't think there is. He was kind of useless for a majority of the game. Like, the Yamoja just didn't impact it. Same thing, I mean, Meerkat fell behind really early on, was 0-3-0. They were focusing a lot on the solo lane side there for the Sturdy Artisans last game. So it wasn't necessarily their fault. It was just the nature of the game, but unfortunately, right now, front lines, especially at this level of play, are super important.
They are. You need them to be executing well, as Gino is the target, but so is Pagon in the back of the fight. He has to get away from Mass, but there's just nothing doing there when he's able to close the gap at the ultimate. Gino gets the kill credit, but it's Mask that sets it up as now the target has become masked in mid. Sino has shown up, but he didn't have the damage, and he's forced to retreat. Ionic in trouble as Snoopy rotates his fight in mid. What a turnaround from the Herculean Hoofs here in mid, and they might even get more perfect portal on the Sino and the Riptide. Excellent mid 3v3, plus the help from Snoopy.
And that's where I've got to give the credit. Those Riptides from Gino have been on point. Last game, several times we're able to find a lot of kills and isolate people. Right there, you get to see it again. It is one of the best abilities that a support can have. And if you are good at it, I will tell you now, play Yamoja whenever you get the chance, because your teammates will love you locking people in like that. That being said, you have to be really good at it, because they will hate you if you launch them the other way around, right? You have to be very careful with where you place it. And you also have to be careful not to, I guess, kind of block them off. But just like a well-placed Ymir wall, it can change the tide of a fight, and I think it works out really well here. Gino showcasing that one, again, orchestrating it beautifully to showcase why he is, even though he can fall behind, right now he's ahead, someone that you have to be worried about. Ionic on this Ymir had a good freeze, good setup in lane, but I think what we're going to see until the fights start to shift into the jungle over here on either left side or right side, you're not going to get as many walls like this one.
Well, there's the freeze, but the problem is Mask is on his way to this fight, and I don't think that Artisans know it. So he is going to be the difference maker. Ionic cannot survive, and this aggression from the Artisans, without the information on where everyone is, it's going to start to hurt them. It happened in mid, where Sino thought he had enough damage for the kill. I think he pulled up a little too soon, and he ended up dropping that kill just barely. And then Snoopy suddenly showed up. Artisans have to go into every fight knowing that they're not going to have the numbers advantage. And now Paycon is just going to fall, but they lost him. They don't know where he is. Paycon made it out with the stealth, but comes back in.
Oh, no.
Now he's for sure going to die. What happened there?
Well, I think he was hoping for the chalk save to come in a little faster. Unfortunately, didn't quite count the numbers well enough to get the cooldowns there for what Baskin was throwing out there. Does manage to burn the beads of Baskin and the ult of Baskin, so I guess trading his life for something big like that is going to be useful. Sino gets himself a kill as well. So, again, all around, maybe not the worst decision. I'm having kind of deja vu. It was 4-2 just a second ago. The kills kind of falling in the same place they did in the first 10 minutes last game, albeit in entirely different scenarios. But it's an interesting dynamic, mainly because I want to know what Pagon is going to do as time transitions. Morgan, right now, ult, pretty much what you need, right? She's not going to necessarily have the big swing of damage that we're used to, although that Spear of Desolation, she is still going to hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
She is someone that I'm expecting to transition a little bit longer. I think Baskin's online more or less now. Once he finishes this next tier 3, he will fully have the damage that you need, at least early on, to get that Yanis rolling. That's when I'm a little worried about it. That's when the power dynamic, I think, is going to shift, at least in the mid lane. Snoopy's already using that global ultimate to rotate a little bit more, so the power dynamic's already shifted over there in duo. Not much has happened over there in solo, which is, I want to say, a fresh breath of air from Meerkat
loves
last
that
game. But it's not something that I think you're going to get used to, because as you can see, they are absolutely ready to fight. Sino's over here in the neighborhood. They might be going for something.
Oh, but so is Mast. Oh, both junglers showing up at the solo lane at the same time here, Gore, so they both turn their backs. No, Sino wants more action, gets the two-man knock-up and silence, but they're just too far away. Relentless One wasn't there for the chase. Even with Pagon on the way, this is more a blue buff invade than being able to win this fight. I'm thinking, yeah, Herculean Hoofs just give that blue buff up in that spot. That's smart. As Baskin rotating over to duo lane, Riptide doesn't connect, so that might be it. But here comes Baskin, portal into the unstable vortex, but Stewart drops the ultimate through space and time, now committed as Ionic in trouble of falling here in duo, but great work from Stewart to find the kill into Snoopy. Are you kidding me? To somehow turn that one around, and now Baskin gonna fall as well. Absolutely nuts work from the duo lane. A sturdy Artisans, they're absolutely popping off.
Look, Morgan's going to mess with me. That through time and space flying through freaks me out a little bit, through space and time, I should say. But of course, that's Pagon reprising his role, making sure he can cross over. And that's, again, the glory of having someone like Morgan. I had highlighted it for Baskin, although last game we didn't get to see him do it that often. He was out of the fights and almost refused, it felt like, to try and morph into someone with a global ult to return. Pagon showcasing that, yeah, I'm going to transition to Yanis. I only have a few seconds. I'm going to cross this map and try to kill you. That's all I need to do in this time period, and it pays dividends right there. I mean, I think a good rotation from him, good freeze, good turnaround. I mean, from start to finish there from the Artisans being able to bait that one out.
Yeah, I think there's a real chance I'm going to turn a clip of what Stewart just did into my background desktop wallpaper, bro. Absolutely nuts that he found a way to turn that fight around, him and Ionic. popping off here in the duo lane. It's just you don't see that a lot with the 3-man gank. They got a little bit of backup there at the end for Pagon to get that final kill, but they survived the 3v2 on their own, and now Greater Scorpion going down around the same time we've been seeing it, that 10 to 12 minute mark. Is going to open up that Gold Fury and start some more fights on this left side. They want to make sure that if they have duo lane pressure the way they just did, that they get rewarded for it, as now they're up about 25, maybe close to 3,000 gold or so. Great spot for the Artisans.
Now I'm a little nervous. I mean, I've had a lot of deja vu this game, and it feels like it's following, again, a very similar trends. The team that got the Greater Scorpion first last time lost the Fury afterward. And depending on how this fight goes, they might be on the same map. It's a 2v3. Mast is low, but I don't know if that's enough.
I don't think so either. Sino gets aggressive, though, wants to drop that ultimate right in the thick of things. Then comes down his boy Relentless One, and they want to at least get Mast, and they do. What a way for this fight to go. Now Snoopy comes in on his ultimate, turns around towards Relentless One. They do get the root and the stun. The CC chain is nasty, but maybe Pagon can find a stun. There's nothing there. It ends up being 1-for-1 solo for ADC, or excuse me, for jungle.
Just forcing utilities to get burned right there. I mean, you have a couple of beads being burned, not that time by Meerkat. Mast, though, losing his life, his ult, and his beads going to be solid for you. You keep pressure over here. I don't know that you need it. What are you getting out of this right now? Outside of scaring people, you can run forward.
Meerkat,
you have the minion wave there, so you might actually be able to find him.
Remember what happened last time? We jumped you in the solo lane. We're doing it again. There's a through space of time from Pagon, absolutely landing it. And Meerkat, he thought he had a respite. He thought he had a reprieve for what happened last game. But Gore, that is not the case. 0-2-1, suddenly shades of what happened in game 1.
I was trying to meme Pagon earlier, saying, haha, you picked Morgan to just turn into Yanis, but he's literally only turned into Yanis. Like, that's what he's going to do this game. He just wanted to play him again and happens to have to spend, well, I guess 80% of the game as someone else until he can finally transition to his one true love here. And Baskin, as much as I highlighted it earlier, I mean, 2-2-2, that's not bad, but, like, unstable vortexes like those haven't been connecting as well as what we saw out of Pagon last game. Like, I think he's very, very adept at this god. It's just not quite lining up right now for him, which is unfortunately, you know, again, it's not necessarily detrimental to him, but it is hurting some of these team fights. I mean, you look at Stuart when you go back to rotate over to that duo lane. Yeah, missed unstable vortex is what keeps Stuart alive there. If that connects, he's half health. All of a sudden, he can't come back into it. He's 4-0-1 now because it wasn't on the mark. You're not finding these kills the same way, and unfortunately, it's not necessarily crumbling beneath your feet just yet, but you're almost 4,000 gold down. Like, you really have to start considering these things.
That's a great point. Stuart used that ultimate right when Baskin showed up on that duo side game, didn't he? Damn, I might just turn into a shameless Stuart stand right in the middle of this game as Artisans get the freest Gold Fury you'll ever see in your life. Whoa, through space of time! Almost. Whew, had me sweating there for a moment, but nope, Artisan get the free Fury. Absolutely is just as easy as I build it. I think that it was because they saw that presence in solo for that blue buff confirmation, and remember, that's Relentless One and Sino's pressure over there, forcing Herculean Hoofs to over-rotate to blue, and then it just opens up the Gold Fury for free.
I mean, being able to make a rotation like that, not even having to use a lot of ults. I think Ionic drops his, but let's be honest, Ymir ult isn't necessarily known for its great team fight. In fact, honestly, if you're using your Ymir ult in the middle of a team fight, unless you're in the Fire Giant pit, you're probably doing something wrong, or you're trying to confirm a kill. Like, there's very few scenarios I'm thinking of trying to drop that. Otherwise, your freeze, your wall, and your slow, that frostbite that you can apply with your autos, is a lot more helpful than what you're going to be doing anywhere else. And right now, I'm seeing kind of glimpses of the Artisan style in the Herculean Hoofs, if that makes sense. Like, they're very split up right now. They don't seem to be fighting together. And that's what started picking apart the Artisans last time around. Now they're grouped up a lot better than they were in game number 1 on the Chaos side. And that's helping them immensely in terms of of objectives, of securing kills, and getting towers so far. I mean, it's just been solid on their side. As long as they keep this state, again, 20 minutes was where it started to fall apart. Don't get too ahead of yourselves, boys. Just make sure you keep going where you're going.
They're in a great spot, though. Now, 2 games in a row, Sturdy Artisans have dominated the early game, and I mean dominated. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And now it's just a question of, is that just a fluke, what we saw in game 1, where they lost a bit of control in that mid to late game, right? I mean, it's 8,000 experience, 6,000 gold. Doug nailing it as always. for us here. I mean, can they show us that when they get these early leads, they can consistently close it out? Or because if I'm the rest of the SCC, I'm watching this closely. I want to see if Sturdy Artisans are the kind of team that can hold on when they get to this point, or if they're kind of perennial chokers. If when they get to that point, they always have trouble closing it out. That's huge data, I think, to have when you face this team, is knowing how they handle these kinds of moments.
It's all up to Sino, I think, right now. I mean, he's the one, first off, he's the one who's most forward pressed of anybody. But also, Chalk, I mean, he's on a very thin wall, right? He can fall onto either side where he's going to help carry this game, or he might end up being a problem. And I think he's doing well so far. Like, I think he has been a good part of these fights. His ults have been on point to be able to knock up 2 to 3 people at a time. He's got good sustain. Mifflin had highlighted that on the desk. Now I get to be the one who quotes him. It's really, really fun to see what this Chalk is going to bring to the table for them. And more so that he's just 1-1-3, right? I was kind of expecting him to be very polarizing, either really high kills, low deaths, or really low kills, high deaths. There's still some wiggle room for either of those to happen, but I think Sino is playing... The way I would describe it is he's doing a solo laner's job in the jungle.
Relentless One comes on the backside, but cannot catch up to Baskin, who escaped with the portal. But I think the real goal for the Artisans was this Tier 1 tower all along. Now can Relentless One escape? He's stuck on the wrong side of town, makes it out of there easily enough. There's no hard commit. Now, Greater Scorpion on the right-hand side should be going down for Sturdy Artisans as well. And Gore, what's become really important to me over these last 2 days watching this SCC action is that the team that's rotating as a unit more, that's deciding where the fights happen, has such an advantage if they can win that initial that initial fight that they start when they get there, because it takes so long for the other team to rotate. It's just not reliable to get there in time to help the fight. This is about who is controlling the map more, who's moving around the map better, and then when they get there, are they executing cleanly? And so far, it's been Sturdy Artisans at the start of both these games.
If they, again, just keep it up at this pace, maybe not keeping up on the fight pace, right? You can slow that one down, although they've slowed down pretty dramatically over the last couple of minutes. Just keeping up this pace of leveling of the gold lead. I mean, there's a 2-level lead both in solo and jungle and ADC. I mean, Stewart's up 2 levels on Snoopy, and that's even bigger. Stewart's not able to just instantly transport to a team fight whenever he needs to. Snoopy is, so that's a really big deal for him. Of course, the 4 kills are probably helping out on that one a little bit as well. But yeah, I think the fact that they've got this level lead, they should then theoretically be the first ones to get those upgraded starters. That's going to help have a big swing in effect for them in the middle of a fight. All they need is to continue going this way. Pyromancer's on board. Soon there will be a Primal Fury. That's 2 prime targets to get some gold in your pockets. They're already up 6K. Might as well make it a little more.
Heading over towards Snoopy's neck of the woods. Doesn't end up making anything happen. Would have loved it. This is Sino, who's in first. 3-man silence and knock-up, but Mass uses the ultimate in order to get away from all that trouble as Relentless One up to the sky with the Somersault Cloud, and Meerkat still right in the thick of it. He takes Sino up to the sky more to get himself out of the fight than anything, but Sino in danger of falling, makes his way out just barely, and now it's Meerkat who shall be the first casualty of this engagement. Stewart gets the kill. Relentless One nearly takes care of Mask as well, who's forced to drop the beads and Aegis just to escape. And I like this. Artisans force the fight in mid. They're going to head right to the Fury on the back of it. I love the way they're playing this map.
A lot of relics used on the side of the Artisans, so a good re-engage here from the Hoofs could absolutely change things around, but you have to re-engage, and you have to re-engage cleanly. Gino's already half health, and that's a beautiful wall from Iane.
Oh, well, Gino's just dead is the thing. Sino gets the kill credit, and my man was ill-advised to come step up at all. Certainly to come step up and immediately get walled off. Another excellent fight from the Artisans, a 2-for-0. They do use quite a few of those relics, but they get the Fury cleanly and leave. This is exactly the way the Artisans are going to have to play all phase long if they want to be one of those top 2 teams, and I think they're setting a great standard. Because I'd have thought coming in that these were the 2 top teams, Cora. I think you agree. And kind of the winner of this sets the pace for the whole phase.
Which is why I think it's exciting to see that they are very close either way, right? Like,
it's close.
Granted, the beginning of the game has been a little more clean from the Artisans, which is honestly maybe a little surprising just because of the fact that, I mean, you look at Snoopy, Gino, Baskin, all of which were in the Pro League last year. You think they'd maybe have that under wraps for them, but Sino, showcasing, I think, a very, very solid leadership role here for them. Relentless One has been very good over there in the solo lane, but I would also argue Ionic and Stewart. Like, Ionic, someone who got to play a little bit last year and kind of suffered from some farm deficits early on, but also someone who has been at the top of the top, right? I mean, once regarded as one of the best teams. You look at TSM back when they were playing, or COG Red right when they were playing. Like, you just barely lose one set, otherwise they might be world champions, right? That's the biggest thing for him. And Stewart, we didn't get to see a whole ton of him last year when he subbed in, but he looked really good in the Pro League last year. Like, I'm not surprised to see him doing well here. I am surprised to see him doing as well up against a team like the Hoofs, but so far the Artisans, they just seem like they've got everything kind of figured out team-wise.
Looks like they're just going to grab that right tier 2 and look for a reset. That's why Stewart isn't there with the team as they look to back up. Gore, but I'm with you though, man. These are teams that we know have experience, and maybe a little bit surprised at how it's working. I'm surprised at how effective Ionic and Stewart have been in lane in particular, man. They popped off against Snoopy and Chino. Snoopy and Chino, who dominated the SCC writ large in the duo lane last year, especially Gino in particular. So I'm surprised about it, how well they've been able to play, how well they've come together, and now in a great position to close this game out. They're not quite ready for that last step yet, but if they continue on this trend, I don't see any reason why they can't. That was mid-fight for a clean 2 for 0 to the Fury, reset to the Fire, to the tier 2 and right cleanly, and now they're grouping up in left as well. This is SPL caliber play around winning a fight.
And I have to say, of all the things that has caught my attention, like item-wise, right? Like, you look down there, and for the most part, you should recognize most of those items from last year. But it's realistically the one starter item upgrade that is confusing me, because we see Archmage's gem more than anything, I think, on mid lanes. If you're going to upgrade your Conduit gem, that's where they go. But this Gem of Focus has been twice picked up here for Pagon, and it's not a bad item by any means. I actually think it's really solid for him. Again, movement speed, you're getting damage increase, you're getting a damage reduction on top of that stacks up to, I believe, of what, 6% damage reduction there, but 90 power. Like, it's just been his option that he's been going for. He did it last game, he's doing it again here, and it's been looking good for him. I have nothing really to say about it. I'm sure there's better, like, aggro mid minds that can just explain it a little better for me, but he's getting the damage done.
Great dive already from Sturdy Artisans. Baskin and Snoopy both forced out of the fight instantly, and one forced to the grave. That's Snoopy, who no longer draws breath in this game. Relentless One taking a ton of damage, so he backs up. The left side Phoenix is already a distant memory. Great ult, though, from Baskin. Might help Herculean Hoofs get back into this game. Pagon is low off to the left side of the battle. But the Artisans have been perfect, and they're not going to stop that now. Sino, though, going back in, immediately gets caught out. This is where they could potentially end up losing something, but maybe it'll work. Meerkat takes some damage, and they can't catch up. I don't love it, man. I thought they were just going to take the Phoenix and leave, but they throw Sino's life away. As long as they don't lose anything else, though, it's not a backbreaker by any means. It's perfectly fine, and maybe they can re-engage. Relentless One comes in, gets stunned out by Mass. Meanwhile, Gino up top is the target, and Ionic and Stewart, the dual lane combo, find another one yet again.
And Relentless One staying alive. I mean, he was surrounded by a lot of bodies there. It was a very dangerous scenario.
This is working.
But this is actually, again, a really good start for them. Maybe not the cleanest way to get the same effect done, but like you said, if it gets you the job done at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Get this mid Phoenix and try to get out cleanly. Otherwise, you do still have your towers up. You're not worried about a reverse sweep.
Right. I mean, you're definitely shouldn't lose the game on the back of a lost fight. As Pagon is planning on sneaking back into this little battle as Relentless One comes down from the somersault cloud. Now here's Pagon, the maybe one who they thought was out of the fight, as Mass drops. Now Pagon gets Snoopy. They make it work. Through space and time is off the mark, and Ionic gonna come back into the brawl too, but he will not have Pagon when he shows up. He's flattened by Baskin, but they'll get the trade onto Baskin, meaning that now it's just Meerkat standing. A little bit of a mud brawl here at the end, but if you're Sturdy Artisans, if you got 2 Phoenixes off it, you can go ahead and take whatever fight you want. I'm on board 100%.
Yeah, you slaughtered 4 of them in the process of getting a tier 2 tower and 2 Phoenixes. So, like, again, you lose a lot, I think, on the tail end of that. But you're not crying over it, right? Again, They have 3 tier 2s up, your Phoenixes are still up, and you didn't have Fire Giant buff for the last, 30 seconds of that fight? However long. So either way, you're not that upset if you're Sturdy Artisans.
Nope.
In fact, if anything, you're probably happy. You got a fun game. You're up 13,000 gold quick maths right there, and you're about to be able to get a free fire giant because they're still respawning and trying to defend these fire minions you send down the lane. Sino Stuart can go over here, get this Oni Fury for free. That's going to give him 2 fire Oni minion waves. That's an insane amount of pressure across the map, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to clean up a pyro, clean up a fire, go for that last Phoenix, or just go for the end at that point, depending on how aggressive you want to be. Carefully, I should caveat on there, because if you do all wipe one tier 2 tower, it might take a while to kill the Titan, but at this point in the game, 25 minutes in, your respawns are just long enough that they will absolutely turn it around on you.
Well, Gore, I think you nailed the calculus on that fight that the Artisans took on the tail end of getting those Phoenixes. It's either they win that fight and they just end the game right on the spot, or even, as you said, if they lose the fight, they definitely aren't going to lose the game on the back of it. They probably won't lose much at all, because the Hoofs have to defend their base. So I love the decision-making there. And now it's onto the Fire Giant. No way that the Hoofs can defend this. And I assume they'll take Pyro 2. And then, as you said, start pushing down this right lane and grab this right side Phoenix as well. This has been almost clinical, not quite to that level of precision. You know, maybe they're still doing their residency, but certainly it's been great. I'm not going to complain here about what the Artisans have done. It's been great.
Now, not quite attending, right? They're almost there, but they're looking to get upgraded.
Oh!
It looks like it's going to be the Hoofs who want to go in.
Right, I like this. This is probably their best chance, right, is to catch the Artisans off guard, but it just didn't work. The Artisans were too ready, too heads up, and a little bit too aware, and Mast could be the early casualty. A perfect wall from Leonic, who has played lights out all game long. Snoopy will join him in the afterlife as in comes Pagon, turning into the Chernobog just to get involved in the fight. He wants Baskin, and he shall claim him. Sino gets the actual kill credit, but Gore, this game is over except for the cry, and maybe they'll take a couple other kills on the way out. Meerkat will have to sit in a coffin, but Sturdy Artisans find a convincing 2-0 win over the Herculean Hoofs.
I don't know that you need to chase Gino down as hard as they're chasing him down, but they're going to do it. They all did just sack to the fountain. But I guess at the end of the day, as long as there's still someone standing with a health bar, that's all you care about, right? Stewart was still there and still happy. And that's the thing, I think, you know, you look at this, there was a lot of successful stat lines, there was a lot of successful plays. I think Ionic deserves a lot of credit. Beautiful walls, beautiful freezes throughout the game to set things up. But also, Stewart just played lights out. Like, I think everybody on the team looked really good, but Stewart looked just a little better than good compared to the rest, and that was a really, really solid game for him.
Yeah, and they won the solo lane in both of the games pretty handily, and they won the duo lane in both games handily. When you're dominating the side lanes like that, I think victory is going to come a lot for you on this current map. Gore, it was great casting with you. A big 2-0 victory here. And now we're going to take a quick break and get it back over to the desk, have them break everything down for you.
Another nail-biting ending with a bunch of people dying, except this time it was a little bit more aggressive than Baskin's one-man escapade into the grave. Mifflin, let's break that game down. Sturdy Artisans bring it to a clean 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like, again, it was team fight diff. They were able to pick out engagements throughout the jungle wherever they wanted, and even in the tried and true 5-on-5 engagements, it just felt like it really was eonic for the most part, setting up these fights with the Ymir walls, or starting off with a freeze, or things like that, that really put them in a position to take these late-game fights in order. But look, I'd be doing a disservice to the fans at home, and I think Finch would probably beat me up if I didn't say it. Stewart, man, this guy was doing it on his own a lot of the time, and it looked real easy when he was behind the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, Stewart is just kind of insane. We talked about it a fair amount earlier on, right? His Apollo is insane, and this Heimdall really plays up to that exact same level. He was just absolutely on point, for sure.
Yeah, I really like the playstyle, and this is why I thought that it was a little bit interesting that we didn't see a priority towards Ymir in the other sets yesterday or throughout the couple of months. But yeah, I mean, Finch came backstage immediately after this set and said, you know what, I should have just said it. They earned it. They earned that BM. Fountain dives galore. And you know what? I have to make another correction. At the top of the hour, I said that the Hoofs are likely going to be the team to beat. It's looking like it's the Artisans, right? These guys are playing out of their minds.
Yeah, for sure. Hoofs, like, we talked about it a little bit earlier, right? They definitely got the star power. They definitely got the experience. Not that Artisans don't, right? But they just didn't really look like the team they should do on paper, right? Like, you look at Meerkat, Mars, Baskin, Gino, Snoopy, and that's like, on paper, you're looking at it and you're going, that is the team. That is the team that is going to go all of the way. And they just didn't really show up today, is all I can say.
Well, you know, they did look pretty good. I think both of these teams are likely pretty close in contention as far as general player skill goes, and even as far as name recognition. Sure, one squad has Baskin, but the other team still has a ton of SPL talent as well. Look, I think that the North American SCC is going to be a very tight battle for the top spot between these two teams throughout the entirety of the year. And they're looking like they're going to hold those top two spots if they're both able to maintain the level of play that we saw today.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I'm loving, and I loved it last year as well, seeing how these teams evolve and grow throughout the year. But we'll have a look at the schedule. That's not the only game that we have on the board for today, Mifflin. In fact, you and I have got a Wiener Dogs versus Tiburones de Tijuana set coming up in just a couple minutes. And then after that, Average Joe's versus the Fishies. So not quite the big billboard top two fight, but we do get to have a sneak peek at what the rest of the teams in this league are capable of.
Yeah, no idea how you were able to mispronounce Winter Dogs, but also pronounce Tijuana de whatever. Perfectly, Blazy. There's an interesting dichotomy there in your diction, but let's not sleep on this set, right? There's still a lot of huge names in this game. You got guys like Crimson, one of the console world champions, Andenster, who's been around since the beginning of time, Yuji and Aquarius, both also incredibly huge names, and that's just the Winter Dogs. When you talk about Tijuana, you've got Guy J, Blugan, Spreen, people that have been playing at this level for an incredibly long time. It's still going to be a pretty good set.
Absolutely. We are going to have to wait another couple minutes to see how it plays out, though. So, ladies and gents, stay right where you are, because we'll be back shortly.